Go ahead carbohydrate as a nutrient in cow feed alongside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Agenda of this discussion is carbohydrate types, non-fiber carbohydrates, crude fiber types included, acid detergent fiber and neutral detergent fiber. Carbohydrate types. Carbohydrates are a main ingredient that used in a cow or a ruminant feed. The portion of the feed accounted by the carbohydrate is approximately 70%. And here are the types of the carbohydrates: sugars, starch, pectin, hemicellulose, cellulose and lignin. It's a plant cell wall structure. The blackish color is a primary wall of a plant cell, while the whitish color is a secondary wall of a plant cell, and this is a cytoplasm of a plant cell, or the protoplasm. Protoplasm contains protein, sugar, fat, starch and pectin, while the cell wall of a plant contains hemicellulose, lignin and cellulose. The contents of a cell wall of a plant are also called the structured carbohydrates, while the content of a protoplasm of a plant cell also called a non-structured carbohydrates. If we classified the plant contents of a cell wall, then hemicellulose, lignin and cellulose is called neutral detergent fiber. But if we will minus the hemicellulose from these content or exclude the hemicellulose from these content, then lignin and cellulose content is called the acid detergent fiber content. Sugars. Sugars are present in the protoplasm of a plant cell, and sugars are rapidly fermented inside the rumen of a cow and converted into the volatile fatty acids acetate, propionate and butyrate. Sugars contain 2 to 5% of a feed portion on a dry matter basis. The second one is starch. Starch is also present in a plant protoplasm or in the cytoplasm of a plant cell. Starch are highly digestible. 75 to 95% are the digestion rate of a starch. Starch are the major plant energy reserves, including the seeds like the corn seed. The main content in the corn seeds, or the major reservoir of energy in a corn seed, is a starch. The grains or the seeds are processed, means break down or finely crushed. They are rapidly fermented inside the rumen, as well as barley starch and wheat starch. Starch are also rapidly fermented inside the rumen, while the corn or the full seeds or the unbroken seeds are less fermented inside the rumen. And starch consists of the 20 to 30% of a cow feed or a ruminant feed on a dry matter basis. Third one is pectin. Pectin is present in the cell wall and classified in the structured carbohydrates, while the sugar and starch are classified in the non-structured carbohydrates that discussed earlier. Pectin is the most rapidly fermented portion of a plant cell wall, while the pectin higher levels present in the beet pulp and in the citrus pulp and in legumes as well. In summers, we offer the citrus pulp to the cows as a source of vitamin C. Likewise, citrus pulp not only is so good a source or cheaper source of vitamin C, while also a good source of pectin. Pectin produces more acetic acid as compared to the other cell content, that is hemicellulose and lignin. Means if there is a more acidic acid in a cow or inside the rumen of a cow, there will be more production of the cow milk fat. The direct relation of the more pectin inside the cow feed is equal to the more milk fat. The fourth one is hemicellulose, also categorized in the structured carbohydrates. Hemicellulose digestibility is 70%, while hemicellulose contain 10 to 15% portion of a cow feed on dry matter basis. The fifth one is cellulose. Cellulose is a major structure of the carbohydrates, and the rigidity in the plant or in the plant wall is occurred due to the cellulose. Cellulose can't digest the simple stomach animals or the human as well. Cellulose can't digest by the cat and dog because the cat and dog are a simple stomach animal. Cellulose are digested by the ruminants or the four stomach animals, that is cow, buffalo, sheep and goat. Cellulose digestion rate is 30 to 40%. If the forages are mature or the forages are aged, there is a higher content of the cellulose inside that forages, and cellulose consists of the 15 to 20% portion of a cow feed or a ration on the dry matter basis. The sixth one is lignin. Lignin is not a true carbohydrates, but we can classify the lignin in the carbohydrates. Lignin are present in mature plants more, just like the cellulose. But the digestibility of lignin is zero, and lignin binds with other nutrients like the soluble carbohydrates, sugar and starch, and decreases their digestibility. Not only the soluble carbohydrate but also with protein or also with the fats, and decreases their digestibility. Lignin present in the cow feed 2 to 4% on a dry matter basis. Discuss the non-fiber carbohydrates. What is the non-fiber carbohydrates? Excluding the crude protein and neutral detergent fiber, fat and mineral from a plant cell, the remnant is the non-fiber carbohydrates. Non-fiber carbohydrates consist of the organic fermentation acids, pectin, starch and sugars. They are highly digestibles and the digestibility is more than 80%. There is a formula how we can calculate the non-fibrous carbohydrate. Here is a one example in front of you. We will subtract the protein content, fiber content, fat content and the mineral content of an ingredient from 100%, and the remaining value will be the non-fiber carbohydrates. Non-fiber carbohydrates is 37 to 42% of a cow feed on a dry matter basis. Crude fiber types or the fiber types. Crude fiber types or the fiber types consist of the two portions, ADF and NDF. ADF also called the acid detergent fiber, or NDF is also called the neutral detergent fiber. As discussed in previous diagram as well, that ADF and NDF are the structural components of the carbohydrates and present in the cell wall of a plant cell. ADF consists of the or contains or composed of the cellulose and lignin, while the NDF composed of the cellulose, lignin and the hemicellulose. Keep in the mind, ADF and NDF have impact in the cow feed. If there is a more ADF in the cow diet, cow will digest less or cow will ferment less. ADF have a role with the cow digestion, while the NDF have a role with the cow intake. If there is a more NDF content in a cow feed, there will be a less intake. Just like that, if there is a more ADF content in a cow feed, there will be a less fermentation or the less digestion. Here is one more example. If in the cow feed there will be less NDF, that leads to the higher intake. Just like that, if there is a lower ADF, the higher proportion of the energy present in the cow feed, and against the vice versa. If we fed the thick cell wall content or the more forages or the mature forages or the mature fodder to the cow, there will be the higher NDF or the higher ADF content inside that forages, that ultimately lead to the low intake or low digestion or the low energy. Acidic detergent fiber, as discussed earlier, acidic detergent fiber composed of the cellulose and lignin. And the one more content is lignin nitrogen. Lignin field nitrogen component, that is also called the heat damage protein or the acid detergent fiber nitrogen. As discussed earlier, if there's a more ADF in a cow feed or in a cow diet, there will be the less digestion, less fermentation, or the ration will be energy deficient. The second one is nutrient detergent fiber. Nutrient detergent fiber compose of the ADF and hemicellulose. In other words, they compose of the cellulose, lignin and the hemicellulose. If there's a more nutrient detergent fiber inside the cow feed, there will be the less intake. And the one more term is the effective nutrient detergent fiber that correlates with the fiber or the particle size of a forage. If a particle size of the fiber size is 2 centimeter or more than the 2 centimeter, that is 2.1 to 2.2 centimeter, that is an effective nutrient detergent fiber, because these particle size are long or are up to the standard that will make the forage mat inside the rumen of the cow. That will stimulate the regurgitation process, and there is a more digestion, more fermentation, and ultimately the more volatile fatty acid production. But if a forage particle size is below 0.7.5 into 2 centimeter, then will not make the forage mat inside the rumen, and ultimately there is a less digestion of a feed or less volatile fatty acid productions. Here are the percentage or the inclusion percentage of the carbohydrate types in a cow feed. Like the organic acid on the dry matter percentage of a feed, their ratio is 0 to 4%, while the sugar percentage is 2 to 4%, and the starch have the higher content in the feed, that is 26 to 30%. Like the soluble fiber have the content of the 2 to 5%, and hemicellulose 10 to 12, and cellulose are 17 to 19, and lignin are 2 to 4. We can classify these contents into two carbohydrate forms, like the organic acid, sugar and starch, and soluble fibers. These are three are the structured carbohydrates, or the soluble fibers are somewhat doubt on it, but hemicellulose, cellulose and the lignins are the structured carbohydrates. These are the non-structured carbohydrates. As mentioned in the front of the ingredients, the organic acid, sugar, starch are the non-structured carbohydrates, but the soluble fibers are the non-fibrous carbohydrates. Means these are the non-structured carbohydrates plus soluble fiber. But hemicellulose, cellulose and lignin are broadly classified as the nutrient detergent fiber, and cellulose and lignin are classified as the acidic detergent fiber, as mentioned in front of them. That's all. Thank you.